Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for coming out in this icky weather. But we are getting snow, so I know a lot of you are very excited about that. Yeah. So, I'm Diane. I'm the Director of Education at the Park City Museum. A couple announcements. First of all, I know there's an accident out somewhere in Kearns. One of our members called and told me. So expect that people will be coming in late. If you have a chair nearby you, just wave them down so that they know there's an extra chair. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we are bringing back our home tour this year, and I wanted you to know that we are looking for volunteers. So if you are interested in volunteering either in the morning or in the afternoon, please contact me at the museum and I'll get you all scheduled. Typically volunteers volunteer one shift, and then the other shift they go and look at the houses. And then we have a volunteer party at the end. So it's June 21st this year. It's a Saturday. And yeah, so if you're interested, just let me know. I think that's it on my end. Our lectures are on the website. I do have a few more lectures coming in, and we are putting them up as I get the information about each of the lectures. So there will be a few more put on the website, especially towards the end of the year. So I just wanted you to know that. And without that, Sandy is going to give a lecture tonight. So a little bit about Sandy. Sandy is in the Friends of Ski Mountain Mining History. He's also a ski instructor and a host, right? Mm-hmm. So he does tours on the mountain, and he's been actively involved, and he's been giving a lot of lectures on various different subjects over the years, and so we are happy to have him back. And then I'm going to let you introduce the special guest.
Okay.
So, okay,
yes,
here we go.
Indeed, we have a special guest tonight. Is it working? Yeah, okay, there we go. Very special guest, live from Park City's own Tenderloin District. I give you Mother Urban.
Well, hello, y'all. Hey, honey, I thought we might want to have something to drink later on.
Oh, that's good. We got some High West.
I brought you that. Okay.
Little plug for a friend of Ski Mountain Mining History.
Yeah.
So, so I wanted to invite my wife to join me tonight, mostly because I was a little bit afraid of getting into the subject and being accused of mansplaining. So I think I might be safe if she's here. But now we're going to go into character, right? Oh, I can't let you be in character alone.
Wait, one thing before we go into character.
Yes, thank you for keeping me on the right track, darling. I have a well-known obsessive compulsive disorder about Park City history. And most of the time, Terry says, true. I've heard those stories, you go tell them to somebody else. So thank you all for being here, for helping me with that directive. But I think I might be at a point where perhaps I've afflicted her with the same infection.
Okay, not the mining part or any of that, but women of that time period who empowered other women of that time period. So that's why I said, I'm here for Rachel.
And I'm just George, a randy old miner.
Yeah, and then there's George. But I'm going to go back to Rachel. As you will hear, I am an outstanding businesswoman. I made a lot of money on those oil duffs. I'm a good neighbor. I did a lot of nice things in town. And I took really good care of the girls, which is one of the reasons why I'm Mother Urban. So think back about Park City in the 1890s when George and I decided to start our business. Oh,
you're next.
I'm next.
It's back to me. What do you say we do a level set?
Okay, let's do a level set. Okay, some of the information about me is very well known and some of it's not that well known. So just so you guys understand, my name is actually Rachel Hayden Bowman Westcott Urban. So I actually had quite a few husbands.
Just one short of the Silver Queen.
Yeah, but my last one was my best. Okay. And I was born and raised by a family, a poor Irish family in Ohio. But my siblings and we all actually ended up doing fairly well in life, even though we started out on the poor side. I was born in 1864. I arrived in Park City in 1889 at the ripe age of 25. And it has been said that I was already a prostitute at that point, and I had a child, and I had been married. And we don't know what happened to that child in history books, but I know what happened to that child. She passed away, unfortunately. But my family, my brothers and sisters did very well. I have a brother who ended up becoming a miner, and my sister in Cincinnati, Ohio, married an executive with Standard Oil. So I just want you all to know, though, I love cats and dogs, but the person I really love right here is George.
And I'm just a skilled carpenter and a miner. I'm a mine owner. We're going to get into some of the details on that. But I was born in Denmark, so I probably should be speaking with a Danish accent. If I could deliver one, I would.
If you knew how to deliver one, yeah. So anyway, when I arrived here, I set up shop, and I was called Mother mainly because I wanted my doves to be educated, civilized, charming. They had to be beautiful, and they had to be healthy and clean, which we'll talk about that later on.
So we were in business before the famous Park City Row, the Tenderloin District. We had a second floor near the train station where we operated a somewhat smaller bordello.
So back in the day in Utah, oops, we didn't change any of the slides.
We haven't changed any of the slides. I'm falling
So
down.
they're probably wondering what the heck we're talking about. There we go.
There we go.
All right. So this is what we're really here for. We wanted to talk about the Utah sex trade. And Eileen Hallett Stone wrote a whole book, and it's pretty interesting. It rambles on a little bit, but there's one chapter just on me. So that's pretty darn good. There were red light districts all over Utah. Salt Lake City, Ogden, Corrine, which doesn't even exist anymore, Bingham, and Park City. So anyway, one of the things that everybody should understand from these pictures were shot by a good Mormon boy, just so you know. And then the other thing that happened and why the sex trade in Utah became actually a big business is, of course, mining. And all the men who moved out west to find their riches followed the women, were followed by the women who helped them spend those riches. And many women who came west were bar girls, they were burlesque dancers, and then, of course, my doves.
One other interesting note about C.E. Johnson, the guy that shot these interesting photos on the right, is that he was also the official photographer of the Mormon Church at that time. So apparently he had two different professions. Okay, so moving along. So what happened in Park City was in 1905 and 1906, there was kind of a hue and cry across the state from city fathers everywhere. The prostitution trade was generally throughout towns, not confined to a particular district. And there was a growing sense that if you put them all in one place, it would be easier to control them. And so in Park City, the decision was made to locate that red light district right along what is now Deer Valley Drive. Used to be called East Heber Avenue. And so it's interesting to note, though, as they were thinking about moving the red light district out there, there was a hue and cry from the folks of Deer Valley. Now, this was before Solomir was even a glimmer in a developer's eye, right? Now, actually, the people that were living out there at that point were not actually the well-heeled. There was a mill out that way, and it wasn't the fashionable part of town, which is maybe why they decided to move it out there. But the constant conflict with all of these changes around the red light districts was that the city fathers in all of these towns were concerned to cut the hue and cry, but it was also a very important revenue stream in these towns. Like 20–30% of the town budgets was coming from rounding up the hookers, giving them a fine, and then sending them back out onto the street. So no, I can't call you Mother. Rachel asked me to build the row. This was a row of 16 houses. There's a shot of it kind of going up Deer Valley Drive. And what's interesting is if you look closely at the houses, and I've got another drawing of a map here that shows the houses, they're all interesting and unique. but they were all built by me, George.
And
So-
thanks to George, you built some fine cribs for my girls.
Yes, I did.
But I got to say, George, you spent an awful lot of time in those cribs fixing things.
Darling, these people needed repairs, honey. That's why I was out there.
I think you owe me some money.
All right, so here's kind of a, let's go. There's a different perspective. It's actually from a sandboard fire map. Now, it's interesting that the insurance maps of the time included the red light district. There are all the little houses out in a row. And at the far left on this slide, you've got a placement there of Mother Urban's purple parlor. There she is again, sitting on the front porch. It was located pretty much at the intersection of Sweet Alley and East Heber. So you had to pass by Mother Urban's purple parlor to find your location. Tip of the hat to Larry Warren about how the houses were set up. They each had a front room. They had a back room for special entertaining. And then if the person inside was a trainman, he would leave his red light sitting out on the front porch, basically to let the train companies know where he was. But because of this high collection of trainmen visiting the cribs, it became known as the red light district. So
Just a little more on the whole origin of red light. It became so popular that women in my cribs would actually decorate with red. They put scarves over the lamps. But some people also say that making it a red light made the blemishes go away for the doves.
So interestingly enough, today there are still 3 surviving cribs along Deer Valley Road. They're number 555, 575, and what I think is 645. Those are all in that drawing, and they're still in place. They're kind of buried in amongst the condos, so maybe you don't even know that as you pass by.
Well, just so you all know, the going rate back then was $2.50 if you went in the back room, $10 if you stayed the night. And just, most men in those days weren't making much more than $3 a day. So, and they paid it, let's put it that way. But I just have to say this about these 3 cribs. My family should have held on to them because they're worth millions now.
Okay, so a dark story about 555. There was actually a murder that happened in that crib. The story was that a Mexican miner was in. There was some screaming, and some other gentlemen from the cribs next door came to try to rescue the screaming woman. And when they entered, what they found was this poor lady had been stabbed in the chest. She'd managed to pull the knife out of her chest. There was a suitcase full of cash covered with blood. So it does appear that the motive for the murder was to try to steal that money. And so what happened was the perpetrator was apprehended, a guy named Petro Canio. He was a Mexican miner, and he almost got lynched. In fact, a lynch mob of more than 150 people, which, by the way, just to give you a benchmark, Blackjack Murphy's lynch mob was only 77. So it was a much larger crowd that came after Pedro. He was, as Blackjack Murphy, was spirited away to Colville, but in this case, the mob did not descend on Colville to bring him back. He was brought to justice, tried, and sentenced to death.
Don't worry, the money was safe.
Yeah, maybe I got to get rid of my.
I think it's that.
Sarcastic.
I thought it might be my hair, but it might be yours.
There we go. Is that better? Yeah. All right.
Oh
there.
my goodness! Way
We should have run
better.
that test.
There,
Okay.
I thought it was my hair the whole time. Wow. All right, it's your turn.
Moving
again.
right along. Okay, so in Salt Lake City, there was actually a similar kind of centralization of the trade that was brought about by J.S. Branford. Yes, that last name should seem familiar. Susie Branford was his sister, and he was the mayor of the town at the time.
She had as many last names as me.
And so he had actually centralized the location for the cribs. They built a large concrete structure to house all of the soiled doves. But the Mormon population continued to raise the hue and cry. They weren't going to have this operation in their city. It was well thought out. He actually brought Belle London down from Electric Avenue in Ogden. She was a famous mother, or a famous madam up there. So there was high hopes, I think, that this would be a major source of revenue for Salt Lake City. But in the end, they were shut down, which probably was a pretty good boon for Park City, right? Because we already had a centralized district, and you could just hop a train up to Park City to get your needs serviced by Mother Urban.
By me and my doves. That closing of that stockade made my business boom. All right, so who were my Johns who came to see my soil doves? You might want to move that slide along.
Oh, let's move that slide along.
So my clients were miners, trained men, and you know what? I had a few prominent men, but I'm not going to say who they were, who were also part of my group. Most were young and single. That's who came out to mine out here west. And the piece in Park City was a boom town back then. So remember, there were 23 saloons. So all of my Johns were drunk and randy. And I don't know, Sandy, did you want to go through those numbers, or George?
Yeah. So what really drove the prostitution business across the West and in towns like Park City? You can see as the towns developed, there was a tremendous skew towards men, many more men than women, and that drove a demand for the professional services of Mother Urban. It changed over the years, right? So. It's a particularly interesting thing about Park City itself was that it was a town that drew many mothers and daughters of the miners. It was close to the Transcontinental Railroad, so it was fairly easy for them to get here. There were quite a number of churches that developed early on, and that led to a much more stable community here in Park City, which is probably why we made the graduation, right? We transitioned from being just a miners' camp and became the bustling city that we are today.
Are you in that picture, by the way?
No, I don't think there are any pictures of me. Probably a good reason.
Okay, so we are going to jump into a little bit of academic perspective. You might want to bring that next slide up.
Let's do that again. Thank you, darling. Keeping me on the straight and narrow. It's what she does.
So anyway, a woman named Jennifer Marie Schulte wrote a PhD dissertation on fashion and fallen women. And she actually talked about that there were 3 reasons into the entree of becoming someone like me. They were the predisposing reasons, precipitating reasons, and attracting reasons. And we are going to go through every single one of them. So the predisposing reasons were factors like, okay, was I an orphan? Did I grow up with a mom who was a prostitute? A precipitating reason, which would be economic pressure. So did I have a low-paying job? Did my husband die in the mines or because of the mines? Or did I have a love affair that went wrong? But the biggest reason for becoming a dove were the attracting reasons. And it's because it was a very lucrative job, right? And it was much more lucrative than anything else that you could do. And you could buy beautiful clothes, and you had an interesting and exciting life because some of your Johns were pretty interesting men. So.
All right, and the big question here, Mother, is why is there a picture of Kitty from Gunsmoke on the slide?
You know, I don't know. Probably because you put it on.
Oh, I put it there? Oh, okay. Well.
That was probably your, fave.
All right.
So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the precipitating reasons. Slide.
Clicking along.
Mining accidents didn't happen. They happened, but it was really the lung-related diseases that got your man in the end. And unfortunately, that meant some women to support their families needed to become doves.
Right, so this was no joke. The miners' consumption and pneumonia-related diseases were really the leading cause of the death of miners. You know, they're down there, they're using it right at the turn of the century, just before the road was started, the drills had no dust suppression systems. So water was added down the drill to basically suppress, or to cool the drill, and it had a side effect that was very fortunate for the miners. It suppressed that dust, but there was a good 10-15 year period where they're using these Widowmaker drills, and you see there's a couple of pictures of, here's a guy operating a Widowmaker drill, and to this day we recall that terrible device with the name of a ski trail, Widowmaker. Most people think it's because you might die on that ski trail, but it's actually commemorating this terrible drill.
I might die on that ski
You
trail.
might die on that ski trail. I won't let you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fashion and prostitutes. So they really dressed beautifully. They had their hair done every day. They loved expensive, fine-looking silk clothing, and the millinery shops, you know, because we have to have our hat, right? Were very busy working for the Doves. So Shuli started reviewing these trends in New York, and then moved out to St. Louis, which at that point St. Louis was also sort of the gateway to the West. So this is what she found out about, you know, what the Doves were doing and how they were spending their hard-earned money.
That Maddie Silk, she sure was hot there, don't you think? Okay, maybe not. So some of the dresses that people wore were a little more attention-getting. Here's an example of that. And Rachel was no Maddie. Oh, moving along.
We should really move this presentation along now.
I'm digging myself a hole.
Yeah, I wasn't that into fashion, you know.
Not quite.
Not quite. So anyway.
This was your driver.
Yeah, this was my driver. Money was the motive for me. And we could switch to that slide. So.
Money was a motive. That's the one we want.
That's the one we want.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the seamstresses who put these Doves in beautiful outfits really didn't make a lot of money. They're only making $2.25 to $6 a week. So prostitutes were making $10 to $50 a week. So you can understand why you might go from being a seamstress and move along in your career to become a Dove. So I was also, you were going to, actually, George, I think you want to talk a little bit about the dads.
I was always, the dads?
Yeah, you want to talk about the dads a little bit because I want to crow about how good a businesswoman I was.
Okay, well, yeah, so the story about the dads is this is what Sam Radden called the city fathers. I think he referred to them as dads. And he would always talk about how, you know, they wanted to do this, they wanted to do that. And he was reporting on, you know, the general perception of what the governance of the town was about and where it was headed with directives. And so there was one mayor who wanted to close the district, but Mother Urban fought back, and thank you, darling, for doing that. She appealed to a client who was a senior person at John Daly Mine, and words were had with the mayor and the other dads, and an accommodation was made.
Well, some of them were my clients, but whatever. So anyway, I was a very astute businesswoman, and I detailed every account of my Doves. And then monthly, I would go to town hall and I would pay my fines. $15 for me and $7.50 for each one of my Doves. So you can only imagine the town was making a lot of money off this business.
Now, here's the perspective that I think is interesting about Mother Urban, right? She was very helpful in helping her ladies find the exit to this trade, right? This is a trade that you couldn't do for all of your life unless you became Mother Urban. That's one exit strategy. But for the most part, these ladies made lots of money. Some of them spent it on laudanum and booze. Others were crafty, like the poor murdered lady in crib 555. they saved their cash. But the particular challenge was once you had the cash, what could you do with it in the state of Utah where a woman couldn't even write a check? So she also had financiers who would help the women who would sign the contracts for them to make legally binding documents so that they could buy houses, open boarding houses and the like, and move into another business.
Or meet a man.
Meet a man.
Some of my doves did meet nice men, like I met you,
Mm-hmm.
and they would get married. And that was another way to get out of the business.
Let's talk a little bit about Calamity Jane. She met a guy named Wild
She's
Bill
a great
Hickok.
dove.
And but she did actually serve as a prostitute early on in her career. She had a lot of flamboyance that she was able to lever into that relationship, with Wild Bill Hickok, and as well as Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Also, although sadly, at the end of her time, she did die nearly destitute, and probably due to alcoholism.
Got a few of us.
Another reason Mother Urban was referred to so fondly is that she had a tight relationship with Dr. LeCompte, who's a famous doctor of the town. Picture of him on the far right is the outcome of his interaction with the big fire of 1898. You can see he actually lost the back of his suit. I wonder if that's the same hat that he's wearing in his photograph, and maybe he could afford a new one. I don't know.
I don't know. He didn't really care so much about millinery like my doves did.
But
so.
he had a strong background. He rode with the 7th Cavalry, not with Custer himself, but with another one of the members of the 7th. He survived that. But he cared for Mother Urban's doves, and that little column down the middle, which of course you can't read except for the headline, Dr. LeCompte praised. It's signed by Rachel Urban and published in the town paper. Right?
Yes,
So she's,
I was educated and I knew how to write, and I loved him because you know what? He kept my doves healthy with a once-a-month visit to each crib.
all right. Well, enough about you. Let's talk about me for a while.
Okay,
Who was George Urban?
fair enough.
Well, the first newspaper appearance of Mr. Urban happened in 1891. Down in Salt Lake City, he's arrested for mischief, right? He's making noise, he's drunk, he's probably in the red light district there. And he repeatedly has those issues, right? High consumption of alcohol, gets in trouble. Fortunately, somebody knew how to get him out of trouble.
That's right. I had lots of connections to legal authorities, so it was a good way to keep
But
you
he was a
out.
very active miner, right? So here's, he had a company called the Vallejo Mining Company that he put together. He was well respected, in the newspaper. Sam Radden would always post an update on how his mining company was going. And so, he was already a respected miner by the time he married Rachel. But he continued working these claims until his death in 1924, or I did, I should say.
Mhm.
So where are these claims? Well, they're actually in the new expanded excellence terrain at Deer Valley.
What is that, a plug for your employer? What?
Well,
What's going on there?
Maybe. What I've got here is two maps that are kind of just grafted together. The upper map is a segment that I got from Mike O'Malley, which shows all of the trails at Deer Valley today and the location of several of the chairlifts, including the Mayflower and the Sultan and the brand new Keatley Express. So you can see that the claims that George Urban worked on were just to the south of that, just to the south of that.
All right. Coming up is a big plot twist.
Okay. Plot twist, yeah. So there's a fascinating article that I stumbled across, just kind of following that name, Rachel Urban, through the newspapers, and it turns out in 1926. A guy in Los Angeles named Carl Westcott shoots his father, Charles. There's a big trial. The trial appears in all of the regional newspapers, and it gets onto Mother Urban's radar. Why is that? Well, she used to be married to Westcott just for about a 1-year period. And so the funny little, you start pulling on these newspaper threads. That led to the discovery also of the fact that she once had the name of Bowman as well. Couldn't really find anything about who Mr. Bowman was, but he would have been her first husband, Westcott II, and then George III. In the end, though, she was going after his money. It turned out that Westcott really didn't have much left. He kind of like the Silver Queen had spent it all. So she came back home, and
That's a bummer. I
left
went
that
all
alone.
the way to LA for that too. I mean, nothing.
All right.
All right.
So
Ooh, the next one is the slide I like least.
this is the one you like least. Yes,
Yeah.
Mother Urban kicks the bucket.
Because I kicked the bucket, but I was 69. It wasn't a bad life.
Yeah, you had a good run. You had a good longer than me.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So she lives on until 1933. There actually are newspaper reports of her estate going into the 40s. Her estate made a contribution to the hospital fund. In the end, it kind of peters out over notices about the cribs, right? She's got taxes due on the cribs. Of course, she's not alive anymore, so she's not paying those taxes. Don't really know what happened to them and how they got to their current owners. She did have a child that survived that was reported on in the newspaper, Richard Urban.
Right there, little Richie.
And so he, again, his story kind of peters out as well. He's got this one shot of him in a foxhole during World War II. No follow-up about death or where he ended up. But she lives on. There was indeed a bar in Park City that operated for a good number of years, not far from where the Purple Parlor would have been. The Rathskeller. Oh, I see some people that
Yeah, they've been
had
there.
a few drinks in the Rathskeller, huh? And then, and of course, the thing that the Friends of Ski Mountain Mining History are most excited about is the Mother Urban Hiking Trail, which is named after her and commemorates her, and visits many of the major mining sites in town.
Well, thanks for summing up such a nice life. That's great. And afterlife.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, but we have to talk about what happened to my business overall.
Your business lumbered on for a while. Another lady named, what is her name? It's right there on the slide, right?
Kay Wrinkles.
Kay Wrinkles, or no, Kay Ringholtz wrote the book about Bessie Wheeler.
Oh,
So
oh,
Bessie
oh, oh.
Wheeler carried the business on for a good number of years. There are photos floating out and about town of Bessie, still prowling the district. But what happened in 1955 is that by that point the Mormon authorities they had enough of the operation of Sin City. They came in from both the state and county authorities, rounded up all the ladies in the night, and that was the end of the business.
Aren't they beautiful? Whoa.
And so that's our story.
Yeah. Lived on for a little bit after.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah.
Oh, we got
Oh,
microphones are coming so that we
microphones.
can. Well, we want you to be on the videotape, so that's why we want to pass the microphone. If That's
Yeah.
all right.
Well, if you want to ask your question,
Yeah, you
Sandy,
ask it, I'll repeat it, and
Sandy
then
can
we'll
repeat
roll
it.
on. There we
Yeah,
go.
Sandy will repeat it while we. Yes.
Yeah,
that
so the
was-
question is, did each woman have a crib of her own, and did she live in it? I believe the answer is yes. Each one is crafted differently. Even though it's all the same builder. If you look closely at the three houses in the photographs, they're all very different. If you look at that Sanborn drawing very closely, each one is different. So it does appear that the ladies lived in the houses. I believe that was really kind of a side benefit. They were not owned by the ladies. But if they were there to do business with Mother Urban, they could live in the house. So the question is, did the ladies live alone? I imagine the arrangements were all different. The historic record really doesn't show that level of detail.
Yeah.
Unless perhaps she was murdered in her crib.
I think not, only because they had to work in that back room. I think it would have been difficult to have other folks in the house, but we didn't find any evidence either way. So.
Hi, Ken. Oh, I think we got a microphone now.
I have a little story. Ken Webb, who was a photographer, during this time. Yeah, and might have taken these photos here.
Oh, really?
Anyway,
Oh,
when we first moved here, I was looking for some pictures of my house and, like tax photos and stuff and things that I could use to maybe remodel my house. Anyway, so I'm going through these pictures in the back room of Ken Webb's photo shop on Main Street. And I find this picture of a guy standing next to a bed with a sheet in front of him. And
Probably was a good thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it was a good thing because Ken Webb was a part of a bust of this little boarding house on Park, kind of mid Park Avenue near the park.
Gotcha.
And the statement he said was, the guy said, "Oh my God, my wife's gonna kill me." So that was my little.
Thank you. That's a great addition.
That's a great addition. That's wonderful.
Anybody else? Other questions?
all the way in the
All the
back.
way in the back. You see Diane?
Diane, you got to run.
Okay, my exercise. Sorry.
In the census reports for 1900, 1910, 1920, were all of the women listed by name? Could you actually track them that way?
Good question. I don't know. I didn't look at them.
That is a good question.
Look that up and get back to me if you would.
No, he'll go home and research it. Don't worry. He'll have your answer.
Yeah, you're probably right. Larry
I'm
Warren's.
coming from the back, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We'll
So
get to Larry.
I noticed that Mother Urban had her doves listed as seamstresses.
Yes.
And why? Was that to protect them?
It was for a couple reasons, I think. The town didn't really want prostitutes on the roll, so that's how I think they had a discussion with Mother Urban, and she decided to call them seamstresses. And I think that happened in other towns too, because I've seen evidence that a lot of women would start as a seamstress and move to becoming a dove, and they would just keep the title as seamstress. So
Also, seamstress shops often were fronts for the operation of red light houses. So there was a very tight relationship between those two businesses.
absolutely.
Larry, did you have a question? Oh, all right, let's get him the mic.
Let's get you the mic.
For those of you who don't know, we're recording this, and in order to get the questions on the recording, we have to use the mic. Otherwise, they can't hear anything. So,
Well, Jack Gallivan told me this story. He was the publisher of the Tribune, grew up as a relative. He was an orphan and was raised by the Kearns family. And he had a story. He spent his summers in Park City, and he told a story that Dick Witherow lived on Rossie Hill, overlooking the row. And Dick would sit with binoculars and a tablet and a pencil and write down the names of everybody who went
Going
in.
in.
And Jack said, it was said of Dick Witherow that he could borrow money from any man in town.
Great story. Thanks, Larry. You always have the best.
Yeah.
And I have a story from the Sweeney boys, Mike, Ed, and Pat. Their father, George, or Jack, anyway, their father, when he was 10 years old, growing up in Park City, had a job. Every Monday morning, he had to gear up his father's wagon and go down the line and pick up miners out of the row and deliver them to the mines where they worked. And he was paid by the mine owners to deliver the remiss miners.
But were they ready to go? That's the question.
When I left the house tonight, my wife couldn't join me tonight. When I left the house, I told her I'm coming to this lecture, and I says, I'm pretty sure I was born too late. I'm gonna learn what I've missed. And she said, okay, hon, have a good time. But that's not my question.
That was more of a statement. Right?
More of a statement. Chinatown had a population that was really separated from the rest of the Park City population. And did you run across any evidence of Chinese soil doves doing their own business in Chinatown here?
I did not, simply because the thread was Rachel Urban, right? What was the business that she was involved with? How, where did she come from? Because she's just this larger than in life character who is not, just, some prostitute, but actually cared for her ladies. She got that name, the whole concept of, she trained her ladies to write letters home to, so an illiterate minor could visit her ladies, get a boff, and then also have a letter sent home, on their behalf. So she was really a caring person. She was caring to the fire department. The fire department all loved her, I think probably for multiple reasons, not just because she baked cookies for them.
Oh, I served them lunch too.
Oh, lunch, okay.
Yeah. And some doves maybe, but that's another story.
Just out of curiosity, did any of these women have children, and how long did they last in the business?
Ooh. So it varied. There were doves that were, 16 and doves that were 70. So how long they were each in the business, they wanted, the younger ones liked being in the business for a while, and then it, of course, wore on them. So, a lot of them escaped because they made enough money or because they married one of the guys that came to see them. That was pretty typical, actually. But I think, once you started it, you were probably good for, not more than 10 years. I don't know. Did you find anything else?
Well, so another thing I looked into fairly deeply is, what were the services that Dr. LeCompte provided? There were diseases that you would need to control, and before the age of antibiotics, there were crude devices used. Mercury was one of them, probably not so healthful. He also, although there's no direct stories about Dr. LeCompte providing abortion services or, they could administer a drug called pennyroyal, which was very popular and widely advertised. Yes, the women probably had children. Rachel had 4 or 5.
I had 6.
Six.
I had
Thank you.
6.
I
Only
lose
one,
count.
and only one lived. So
How many were mine? You don't know?
That's for me to know.
Well, then why do I get in trouble for visiting the cribs? I don't understand.
Well, you might have more children. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it could be that. Anybody else?
I've portrayed a Mother Urban many times for historical society events. And on the 125th anniversary for Park City, I walked in the parade down the middle of Main Street as Mother Urban, and the then Mayor Dana Williams came out and walked arm in arm with me. And I was like, imagine if she could see this. This was kind of great, And then I stood in front of the No Name as a character giving information. And some elderly couple said, at least one of them said, that they grew up on Rossi Hill and had to walk home before the curfew past Mother Urban's place, and she'd always have the porch light on to light that part of the street for them. But then once they got past that, then she'd be like, "Now get on home, you kids," and be kind of ornery about it. But I guess they felt like there was this
didn't really
love,
want them to
respect
see what was
of,
going on.
yeah, keep the light on for them to get by.
That's a great story.
All right.
Any others?
Any
Nope.
others?
Any others?
Oh, well, thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. All right, now we can go drink our
Now
High
we can drink
West.
the High West.